Well, it just took me a few minutes, but better late than never. Thank you for joining me. I'm Karen McDonald. It is our Frequency Friday, and who knows? Oh my gosh, it's been like a whole 7 days. Let's get this going. Let's look at some of the most interesting things that have happened this week. And I am really on top of this because, like, in the last little while, we've been feeling earthquakes out in the different areas. So, not far from me, there was a 3.2 down in the lower part of the Okanagan. So that's only about 3-4 hours away. Things are happening, and they're at 10 kilometers. So I'm more excited to see what is the depth of what this is, because you can always tell if it's an actual earthquake. You can actually feel it builds up, and boom, it happens, and then there's an aftershock. If it's a detonation, you can tell that something, I would say, man-made. It will just go kaboom, and then you have this like other thing going on. So thank you. And it's great to see Mark. Mark and I have been following each other all afternoon, as we do sometimes, right? We were at Journey to Truth today. Carrie Cassidy was on. A lot of people are having shows, trying to get the disclosure out coming in right now. So if you've got the opportunity, please look at some of those shows. So one of the things I want to talk about was these quakes, because oh my gosh, there is a lot going on. And if you don't know where to go, I'm going to show you. I'm not going to tell you where to go, but, it's where you can find the information. So one of the things in here, let's take a look at that, because a lot of people, you rely on other people. And again, a lot of times I found that some of this information is actually disinformation. So one of the things in here, let's take a look, because I want you to see that there are so many different ways that people can take a look at this and you're not aware. But, the thing is to get you to where this is a simple thing for you to do and to look up. And, you shouldn't have an entire problem going through this. One of the things in here, let's say I'm looking at Earth in Canada right now. So if you look at the earthquakes in Canada, isn't this a great place to look? I mean, really? Because you're seeing what's been going on. You can look at, is this what's been happening the last couple days? Where do we start? Where do we go? These are areas in here again, right? We can zoom in. Sometimes you're lucky, but usually you can see actually as we get in here, something's been going on. And I find a lot of times people are reporting that they had actually noticed that there's been quakes. They've been feeling it, the entire areas. And one of the things that we saw here, you can see here, there's one in here as we get into here, Okanagan Falls, south of Penticton. Now, for those people that are not in our areas, this is actually the areas. Remember, if you just heard about what happened up here, and it was up at just above there, which was at something called Summerland. And Summerland, this is the area, guys, that was all on fire here. So if you don't know this, here is the whole area where actually all the fires have been. So am I surprised that there's going to be a little, earthquake out here? No. And especially at 10 kilometers. So we know where that is. Like in some of the areas where I was last year, in the areas out here, these were all on fire. And there's still several, I think 4 or 5 going. We've got like 149 fires right now going on. So one of the things that's, really kind of if you haven't seen that, is to also take a look at what the fires are doing. Look at your air quality, right? Very, very significant. There's stuff going around, and especially when we start seeing on what we call the USGS, because the USGS here, let me tell you, when you start looking at some of these things here, it's absolutely insane what you're seeing, because on here, there are so many different quakes going on in what we call the Ring of Fire. So basically on the outside, but the whole entire ocean is going up. And, you start looking at basically in Vancouver Island, you're seeing that these shakes and stuff are going on almost daily, just whether it's on the island, usually just outside the island. So this is something that you might want to take a look at here, because there is a whole bunch of weird stuff, let's say, going on here. And like I said, if you're not aware of it, you need to. One of the things I want to bring to your attention here also is look at some of the different, isn't that neat when I do that? Anyway, one of the things I want to talk about is the USGS. Now, that's another one that's very, very common. If you haven't used it, it's one of my favorite ones to take a look at to see what kind of a bigger picture is going around. Because the USGS here, let's say, once you start going into here and you take a look at that, you're going to see basically what is going on. And let's say we're going to take a boo at the USGS. Again, in here, as you can see, look at this whole, and they've even got it marked out for you. That's the Cascadia subduction. Kind of ironic that it has right angles, but that's the way it goes when you're looking at stuff, and you can look like a duck, quack like a duck. That's probably a duck. So as we zoom in, you can see a lot is going on in here, right? And I've got the ones that are just basically over 2.5. You can actually play with some of these different things and have some fun and go from, what magnitude you want. Do you want to have what's the newest one? You can play with this in here. We could go to the largest magnitude even first. Right? You're seeing a lot in the Philippines right now, Indonesia as well going in. Those are some of the bigger ones. But yeah, take a look at this, guys. It's happening. There's no question about that, right? So a lot of people don't realize they may have fault lines and stuff as well. So once you take a look at that, great to see. Oh, there's Zosha's in here too. Cool. So in here, do get aware of in here, because I think it's really important. If you haven't been into, where you've had a situation, you want to take a look at what preparation is. We'll go into that a little bit later in the show. But one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention, I thought was like really important. And the reason why, when we're talking about pole shifts and different people kind of in the know, different people get actually alerted, and I'm one of the ones that, I've been really blessed to have that. And when you start looking at one of the things here's one of the insiders. I don't know if you guys know who Stuart Swedlow is. That's him here on the right. David Nino Rodriguez was basically a famous boxer, actually, in the last decade. Started turning to podcasting in the last 6 years or so. But anyway, Stuart had a lot of stuff in here, and it was really interesting. Stuart Swedlow's background is pretty amazing. He's a reverend, but he was part of the Montauk Project, part of the secret space program. His uncle was actually second in command of Russia. So there's a lot of stuff he gets intel, and he got actually contacted last week. And I know I got contacted a couple of weeks ago too. It was like people they're in, let's say, whether it's Navy intelligence or they're vets or they're just, no one really knows, but they're looking at the operations and they're seeing what they can do. But I was advised strongly, make sure you have your, radios, your walkie-talkies, things like that, because communications are going to go down. And one of the things that Stuart was saying, which was really amazing, he said they are not calling it the event, they're calling it a convergence. And so one of those things that's really, really important is for you to take a look at what sort of he's talking about. And I'm going to go a little bit over that because I actually took some notes, which I thought were kind of cool, because I thought, Stuart's got some usually fairly decent, information. One of he said is that you got to remember some of these events or operations that are happening, they're either enhanced, natural, or unnatural. So again, one of the things you have to pay attention to is what's happening with the animals and wildlife, seeing what's going on here. And one of the things he really talked about was the uploading of the digital DNA, which is being taken from basically everyone, especially if it's been injected. These sensors are then going in to the satellites and their GPS in digitally DNA mapping everyone. That's their thought of immortality, but there's no consciousness in that. One of the also things he brought in here, is that he was told something is going to happen pretty soon that no one has ever seen while we've been alive on this earth. And I went, well, that could be interesting. That could be a lot of things, right? Anyway, he talked a little about the disclosure, the armadas, the 3-eye atlas, and have been warnings basically to people for Earth, a little bit about the Antarctica. He really got into these earthquakes around Japan, Venezuela, Indonesia. And he brought up something that I've been talking about. I was amazed because I've been at this for about 3 weeks. Several of us have been able to detect gamma radiation penetrating, which penetrates into the earth, but also penetrates into and through your entire body and biofield. So you can be noticing temperature increases. And right now with that, it's going to increase the magma underneath. And that's going to start expanding these plates, which I'm going to go into, to the tectonic plates. Now, when you have anything like an EMP, which is, if you've got anything electronically or energetically or magnetically pulsing, it can push this stuff right over the edge. And is it really natural, or is it that's enhanced? That's the whole thing about this, and what it's doing to the Juan de Fuca plate here. So one of the things, especially more so, and we're not going to throw the people out on the east because you just saw that they're flooding. If you don't know that in New York, they're actually in flood areas in New York right now. But the concentration, just because more of where we are, is the Pacific Northwest. And he said there are Vancouver Island is getting little quakes. So is Yellowstone right now. And what I listened to for this whole show for 45 minutes, which is not long, it's worth listening to, is that one of the things he talked about was the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is basically, they've been getting also, which I noticed had a big quake about 2-3 weeks ago as well. But under Lake Michigan, there are huge holes at the bottom, and these crevices go all the way into what? Yellowstone. So that's another thing we got to start, paying attention to, right? On here. So these are things that could be what he considered to be trigger events. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, I would. So that's one of the things I thought might be really kind of interesting, if you want to take a look at some of these things. And then we'll get a little bit into how to help people and what to kind of have, available here. Because I think that's part of the, different issue, right? On here is getting into what's going on. These frequencies are picking up every behavior, every natural disaster, even the political realms. Everything is ramping up. And so one of the things, when you just hear about what's going on, I think it's really, really important to take a look at this. And one of the things, let's take a look at what's picking up. So I'm going to listen. We'll just listen for a few minutes here to what Stuart has to say, because I think it's really important. You're hearing it from another outside source, and this is really great. So I put some of these links in the chat box for you, so later you can go scroll up and take a look at that, because that is going to be one of the things that you're going to need to take a look at. So let's just listen to Stuart here for just a couple minutes. Won't be long, because you know how I like to do that, right? And he's saying there's going to be a trigger event, the convergence coming in the months shortly.
I'll let you take it from here.
Well, I'll tell you what, I just had the briefing on that 2 days ago. And the earthquakes in Venezuela and Colombia and in Japan, actually there was one this morning in Japan, 6.8.
There was one today?
Yes. And I'm going to tell you something, a couple of things going on. First of all, my listeners know, and maybe yours do from being on your show, for several years now, I've been saying that the gamma rays that are bombarding the Earth are causing the magma to rise to the surface, melt the rock, make the tectonic plates slip. And that's what's going on. Okay, so it is a natural event that is occurring across the Earth. However, there are EMP weapons that are being used by, let's say, nefarious governments that are pushing it over the edge. So in effect, it is a natural event with an unnatural enhancement.
So in other words, they're escalating it. They're trying to pick up the event to happen sooner.
Yes, but here's what happens. Once that process begins and these tectonic plates start slipping, they affect each other. So there's no longer a need for EMP or artificial electromagnetic pulses to push it, because it's naturally now slipping. So what I was told was there's a convergence going on the West Coast between the San Andreas Fault, the Juan de Fuca Fault, and there's another fault in the Mojave that is helping slip the San Andreas Fault. And I was told that within 3 to 6 months, there's going to be a gigantic quake, especially in the southern part of California, but there will be effects across the entire West Coast from Mexico to British Columbia. including volcanic eruptions and so on. And it's going to be quite devastating. It'll be well over a 7, possibly an 8 or even more. There will be complete devastation. The American government is not capable of helping so many millions of people simultaneously. So I warned people a long time ago to get the heck out.
So those are some of the things I think people need to be aware of, because, if you're not on top of this, it's going to be one of the things in there. Thanks. Ed's in here, and M3 looks almost like mental or Montreal, one way or the other. Karen, check out Ben from Suspicious Observers. Yes, I'm with, I know Ben Johnson as well, like that. So anyway, I've been following that as well. So those are some of the people. I like Mr. MB333, and there's some other people. We've got Earth Watcher, Geomagnetic Earth Watcher. I'm checking in with all those. We've got Gina Colvin Hill, who's a friend. I've got Marguerite, a friend. All these people actually know. So we're kind of like, a bit in the groove. So, those are things that, I want to be on top of. But these are some of the things I thought that were actually really pivotal that we really need to look at. One of the things as well that came to my attention as well is that here's another one. And again, one of my favorites, of course, is Dabu. I also listen to all the preppers, Canadian Prepper, New York Prepper, Angry Prepper. Right? There's a lot of preppers I listen to. And again, I take everything with a grain of salt. But one of the things in here that just came up as well is some of the warnings that have been coming up. So if you haven't been able to see some of this, what are these warnings that people, maybe need to put into their basket? Like I said, it's worth looking at, because there's another thing that just showed up. There's another 2 plates that started slipping, actually, and there's been 2 independent people talk about it. So this is one of the ones I started looking at as well today. So I put those again up into the chat room for you, because really important here. And these are one of the things in here that we're looking at. So let's take a look at, shall we? And there you've got is the warnings are being prepared for the big one. And Dabu, who's been on and has actually very accurately predicted many different things ahead of time, started talking about they're preparing, and actually the actual military is preparing. They're already prepared for this. I know I've got people that are active and inactive right now, but they're actually preparing for this. And they're preparing for as high as a 9.2 earthquake. When it hits Alaska, we hit the 24-foot tsunami. It's going to start everything. It will create a trigger, especially in British Columbia and in different areas where we have the dams that go from Canada to the States. We've got a lot of those dams are ready to go. And they said by the time the Revelstoke, British Columbia dam goes and hits into Nelson, it will be a 200-foot tsunami, not a 24-foot. I was told 200-foot tsunami. And again, I'll talk a little bit with what I've done here with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. So this is another one that you want to take a look at. Game doesn't take long. Let's just take a listen to this.
This is Dabu 7. We have officials from the Washington Department of Natural Resources releasing a simulation for a megaquake hitting the Kodiak Islands, Alaska area. And you can see here, this 9.2 earthquake could generate a 24-foot tsunami all the way to the coast of Washington. Then 5-foot waves are expected to make their way past the Strait of Juan de Fuca all the way to the port of Tacoma. So this simulation of warning, the latest warning, we know that Southern California, San Andreas, all of that is overdue to come ripping loose. And then you have the Cascadia, which would run right up into the area where these waves would hit. All these plates kind of interconnected, but this is a big one. And Alaska has generated the biggest quake like ever. It's going to do it again at some point, it seems. And they think it's going to come from this spot right here. And they're putting the entire West Coast on notice. So we've had a few earthquake updates here as of late, but this one, pretty big one, when they're saying the 24-foot waves could hit the coastline, and a 9.2 is no joke. It would devastate the entire region.
So again, a few more things you need to take a look, put into the basket here. So, one of the things is people go, I don't know where the hell I should live. Where should I move to? Where should I be going? This type of thing. And there are something that we call safer zones, by the way. So if you haven't looked at some of this, there is something. And again, this would be called what? This has been called the DETOX.com, but you got to know where to look. Okay, so a lot of people, this has been around for about 10, 12 years. I've known about this for quite some time. And so let's look at where we possibly would see something like this, right? And so in here, we're going to take a look at what is it's called the troubled times, but whatever, take it for what you want. So one of the things in here, when you take a look at this, in the troubled times in here, we're going to take a look at what this is. Okay, so the troubled times here is basically the Zeta. And Zeta is a group of people, obviously, if you don't know that. And these are advices on the location. So they have it not only by countries, they have it by some of the major cities. They also go by provinces and states. So you can take a look where the fault lines are, where the Madrid is, where the mountain ranges. And on top of that, a lot of people tend to forget is where the volcanoes are. They should have another category actually here. But where are some of the safer zones to be in? So a lot of people, let's say if they're in British Columbia, what are they expecting? There's going to be some of the plate, the subduction problems that's going to trouble basically the whole Pacific Northwest here. But it's going to go all the way from basically the North Pole into Russia and into Canada. And so different parts, and what they talk about here is close to Mount St. Helen, Mount Rainier, right? All those different volcanoes. There's actually Kelowna's on a volcano. There's some in the Kootenays. And then some of the other stuff too. People didn't realize what was going on in those areas. We've also got several that are just outside of the Vancouver area. So we've actually got a couple of volcanoes here in British Columbia. Most people don't seem to think about, but these are starting to happen. And then they talk about whether people get into Hercolumbus, Wormwood, Nibiru, the 12th planet, doesn't matter. If they talk about any kind of whether even it's a comet or something, or an exoplanet that comes between the Earth and the sun, this could create on top of it extra waves. So what they're talking about here is the southern ports of British Columbia will ride through the pole shift with some stress. Okay, and that means if you're right at the border, or if you be obviously, I think, on the other side of the Okanagan, right? So I think there's a great things here. And again, one of the problems being was when people are in Rocky Mountains or have mountains up here is that you can now get avalanches. And we've had it in a lot of areas here in the Kootenays where, you get a little rock slide or a mudslide or an avalanche, you're not going anywhere. So that can affect, again, the water mains. So you want to be sure that you've got access to water or a stream or something like that, or a well, right? And you got to know which directions that they're flowing in case there's a disruption. And so, but here's the happy news, okay? Let's send up the balloons and get the celebration cakes. After the shift, BC or British Columbia will be well situated with a warm climate near the ocean, right? As some of it may be gone. So those are some of the different things in there. I thought, take a look at the DETOX. If you don't know where to go, you can look, like I said, province, states, countries, all around the world. So this is actually stuff here. So I think that's actually a cool one. I've always known about that. And it's a happy thing to be aware of, where you might want to be. A lot of people just don't factor in what I think is critical information. And if you don't factor that in, it's not a great thing to do, right? Like I said, a lot of people just do not have enough information, or they're working on stuff that, might be outdated. And like I said, things are changing day by day, week by week, all sorts of stuff in here. One of the things I'm going to bring to your attention is my data group. So as you take a look at here, I have a great data group, okay? There's over 12,000 people there. Plus on my other page is over 5. Another one is close to 5. I've got followers. So we're probably sitting here with close to 60, 70,000 people by the time I'm done. So in here, a lot of these things, like I said, if you have any questions, you can go in. What I think is pertinent, every day I am blogging. One of the things you see here that I talked a little bit about this was actually Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Okay. And one of the things with Dr. Miller is that he's one of the forerunners on prepping and survival. So that's one of the things that we want to take a look at. One of the other things I want to bring to your attention, on a lot of my Facebooks, there is an album. That album here, I have a whole section here, get this, on pole shifts. Are you surprised? Of course I have one. You think I'm going to let that go? So one of the things in here that when you're seeing is that we want to take a look at what could possibly be in there that might be of some consequence that you might want to know about. So let's take a look what I think is important. So let's take a look at that. So on my Karenann MacDonald, let's just go a little bit into the pole shift, the Madrid, the Cascadia maps, corneal mass ejections, Schulman waves, and Carrington waves, and solar flares, because all that stuff is telling us that we're supposed to be having things in there. So there's a thing that Dr. Miller talked about also, is to watch for supernovas, because there's actually something called Beetlejuice, just like the movie Beetlejuice, 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 and they're expecting some of this stuff to go supernova, means it explodes, there we go, and then it creates another ripple effect, and here we go. I've talked a little bit even last week about radiate renew and some of the EMFs affecting people, emotionally, mentally, sort of things like that. Now we're going to factor in some of that gamma ray. One of the other things I did as well, you can go back and take a look at. I did probably a dozen shows this last year or so with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. So if you got the opportunity, go to Richard Allen Miller. He's doing a lot of stuff. If those of you are in the Pacific Northwest and you want to go down to Mount Shasta, the end of the month, well, geez, and that's what, next week, the 28th, 29th, and 30th, they're going to be having a whole bunch of speakers. Actually, it's dynamite speakers. So if it's something that floats your boat, you might want to go to that as well. So we can take a look there. So in here, if you're looking for maps, you're not sure where to look, one of the things is called the future maps. It's called Gordon Michael, or it's just known as Scallions maps usually. So one of the things in here is to go through here and you can take a look at the areas. As you can see, a lot of that looks like, Swiss cheese. So there we go. So in here, you want to be high on the ridges. Ideally, if there's enough of, and there's a magnetic pole shift and there's other pole shifts. There's just the one that, according to Dr. Miller, we've had 5 epochs. We're on the 6th reset right now. He said what's interesting is there's no actual written information that survived any of those 5. I have a few pictures here and there, but nothing of any consequence to survive a reset. There you go, from the horse's mouth. Okay, so, if you've got people in here, this is where you really want to be aware of in here. And take a look. If you actually see into parts of Saskatchewan, I was told about this a long time ago when I did Project Ascension in 2016 for a year, is Sergeant Patty Broussard had actually talked a lot about. And the military have these, because I sat there and you think, well, the prairies are flat, but the prairies are so low that they flooded in a lot of areas. And one of the areas was right between Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And this was known that they actually said they had information that it came in because a meteor hit there. And this little asteroid went in there and boom, created a crevice. They told me there's going to be like a little sea starting up there. So a lot of people, I remember thinking like, David Wolf, oh, come out to Lake Ontario, come out to Thunder Bay, come out to POLES, and we got all this stuff. We've got a little compound going. We're going to have a prep site. And they went, if we change just a little bit, look at what's happening in Ontario, you guys. That's not looking too pretty there either. So a lot of as you think Ontario, Quebec, different areas in there. And I've actually known people that, where they had actually African tribes in Bear Clan, like I'm Bear Clan, but the Black tribes of the Bear Clan, they actually have sent some of their people like satellite centers. It's like timeshare condo. People have put these things out for satellites to make sure that, the bloodlines survive. Again, topography is everything, a lot of people, you don't want to be in what could possibly be one of these little flood zones. So again, if something happens, it's always ideal to be up over 4,000 feet. Great idea. So you might think about New Mexico and go, why? But then you start looking at the topography when these places are 5, 6, 7,000 feet up. Makes a difference. So one of the other things too, this is the data talk we just talked a little bit about. There's the Navy map. There's where ley lines are. Ley lines will be changing as well. In here, these are actually connected to the major water systems. A lot of people don't realize this, but there's Fort Qu'Appelle, okay, Okanagan Lake, Mount Shasta, all these different things, all those spokes also tie in, and the center would be the Grant and Teton, by the way. So again, where are the water systems? Where are we looking at this stuff? Where railway's going to be? All those things I factored in as well. So those are always things I like to just take a look at. A lot of people don't, but where's your major, lines going to be? You won't have communication. And one of the most important things is if we lose something, all your ports are down, guys. There'll be nothing. So, like I said, there's nothing wrong with having 3, 4, 5 months worth of food or supplies, or a backup. Okay, so this again, take a look at where the compression zones are, where the plates are. All those things are really, really important, right? And that's what the guy was talking about. There's extra plates going on here. So again, something I always keep in mind, where those ley lines are, where things are attributing. People weren't aware of this, but the Mississippi, Missouri actually starts right between Alberta and Saskatchewan, right where it says milk. There's a whole thing called the Milk River or Old Man River. This, by the way, is actually one of the starts, as you can see. Most people aren't aware of it, by Cypress Hills out there. And I'm up there. I have a nice flag over there, but that's another point. That's an international law point. Okay, so this is the one place that feeds basically all of, you can see the mid to the eastern board. And I want you to be very aware, because a lot of friends in my states here that watching here, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, I want to go to Tennessee right now, or I want to go here and there. Not always a great idea, because you've got to remember, where are the things like East Palestine that just happened, right? And where did Connors, Ohio happen, right? So you start looking at some of the different areas here. There's been some major issues. And again, Tennessee with the flooding and stuff like that. Okay, even look at New York right now, and all those areas just basically flooded. So again, this is the one for the East Coast. The other one comes out of basically here, out of Revelstoke, out of, you guys think British Columbia, but in the Siniak territory here. So this is something, again, just to bear in mind, right? And make sure, look where that water is, and then start thinking about where they want to crack it. Okay, so again, a lot of things in here. This is a really cool map I found. It goes back to Atlantis, Mew, and Lemuria and stuff like that. And this was done by Churchward back in the 1930s. And it was a sketch of, they figured to be the bug out places. So once the pole shift happened, I noticed that the Kootenays was actually one of their better ones, right? So bear that in mind. These are some of the different areas as well. You can see where most of it is. It will be, again, 400 miles or 4 hours roughly off each one of the coastlines. So you shouldn't be anywhere within 4 to 5 hours of a coastline. That's a clue. So I thought it was very cool. Again, another thing just to bear in mind. So everyone's got a version, but you can tell they all have a quick version. And these are, again, some of the ley lines and access points and stuff. So once this plate hits, I want you to see how it's going to affect it. And that's why, as these things have been shifting, we've actually had a huge, off Crescent City, there is a volcano. Some of these are in the ocean, you guys, like 200-300 miles off here. And they've been going off. So as it keeps throwing the plates one way, it's also shifting them this way. So I want you to be very, very aware. That's why we've been feeling shakes. A lot of people in our areas have been feeling shakes, not just transit stuff. This is something a little bit more close to my area, but I thought, oh, it was one of the best ones on there for showing stuff. This is an area in the Kootenays. Remember, if you open a fault line that goes underneath a lake, you can drain that entire lake in no time flat, and that will be sitting here just as desert, like just a mud hole. Okay, so a lot of the places here, especially where if you're near hot springs, a lot of people don't take into account, if you're near hot springs, again, those can start going off like geysers too. So be very, very aware, of the topography and where you're looking at. And again, something I looked at here too. So the major cities, Saskatoon, Regina, Edmonton, Calgary. Calgary, like some of the different areas, actually might do pretty high if they're close to the foothills. You would have to be really close into the Rocky Mountains, though. Okay, on here. So one of the things in here, because a lot of people never think about, they go, oh, the prairies are flat, there's no problems there. Well, it was actually totally backed up and underwater before in the last flood. But what happens is when it went away is that some of this stuff here, these rivers actually bloated and sometimes didn't drain. And some of the water systems go just absolutely backwards too. So anyway, those are just some of the other things I thought, well, worth taking a look at, right? And again, one of the things most people always forget is the different Cascadia range. And look at the amount, seriously, look at the amount of volcanoes we have here. Baker, Glacier Peak. I haven't even gotten, like I said, there's several that go right up the range into British Columbia in Alberta. Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Adams, Hood, Jefferson, the Three Sisters, right? So there's a bunch of things. Here's Mount Shasta, and they're talking about having a party down there in a week, right? These are not places I would go to myself when people are actually already on high alert. So there's just something there you might want to take a look at. And as I talked a little bit about Betelgeuse or anything that could go possibly supernova, this is when it's going to do its aha moment, and then it can clear dust and start creating havoc down here. So again, this is something else. We did at Project Ascension. This is Project Ascension on YouTube, number 16. And when we talk about the magma, and that's what Stuart Swerdlow talked a little bit about, this is what he's talking about. There is magma and lava underneath there. So if those lava tubes start heating up, what do you think is going to happen? And people forget what's going on in Mexico and Texas. So there are other things to factor in other than geopolitical things. And again, we're different. People have actually migrated over the years. I always looked at where they did. So I like to look at stuff too, even like what Meredith Quinn, all the clan mothers, all the tribal mothers, all the matriarchal, what has been documented with these people for a long time. And again, so usually, when take a look, anyone that I think basically thrived through a pole shift or epoch should be qualified as time walkers or time travelers anyway. So again, taking a look at that, just wanted to let you know, a lot of these markers are actually from those peoples. People they're not going to tell you what's really in there, and again, people have been documenting stuff. And here we see Atlantis might rise well enough again. Okay. So a lot of these areas, don't worry about these aboriginals and these treaties, because, these are tree ties, not treaties. So again, these are fake areas for fake governments, for fake payoff stuff. And they do not have title to any land. We'll make that very clear. Same thing when people started knowing what the boundaries were, when you had, the whole thing of, Upper Lower Canada and the 13 colonies and the 5 nations. So lots of stuff is there people may not be aware of, okay, on here. And so as we go a little bit more into here, let's just take a quick thing. Again, I spoke at length, like I said, last year and a half, I've been spending every couple of weeks, I have an update and speak with Dr. Miller in case he's got something I haven't picked up. Again, how it's expected to roll, shake, right? Where are the different things that we're looking at, on here? Nuclear reactors. Don't want to live in Saskatoon or something where you got a nuclear reactor, you guys. Okay, these are things that I take into account of. Canada has 19 nuclear reactors, by the way, in case if you didn't know that. Okay, what are the targets in case there's anything even political? These happen to line up here. So again, and these are actually some of the reactors here in Canada, by the way. Don't want to be in northern Saskatchewan these days, do you? Or the middle of Alberta, there could be some nasty stuff. Again, a lot of people are just not aware of these things, right? On here. So like I said, the 6th largest share in nuclear power, by the way, is putting out stuff here. So with the 19 reactors. So again, being very well aware of where some of these sites are, how the NEXRAD, and a lot of people we haven't looked at NEXRAD, that's the radiation levels. So they're playing, you can see weather warfare, how they're playing in different areas, being plummeted and plummeted and plummeted. And you can really see sometimes they're very clear, but you can actually see they're circular, they're coming off the towers. Okay. Those are the towers that they're using here. And again, where these domes are. So you can see the ones up here at Nelson, right? Transits, Calgary, Edmonton, all those areas in there. All right. So do remember, we've got EMF coming in, and the EMF spectrum, this is what I want to bring up here, is the gamma radiation here. Okay. Gamma radiation is a whole beast on itself. It's one of the most toxic things that goes right through the body, right? Like I said, that's what we're going to be very, very concerned about here. Okay. And this down here, if people have never seen, these are actually the megahertz that the military uses. And for deployment, this is where some of your nefarious stuff comes in and what they're using and targeting people. Okay, so this is not just towers. It can be from microwaves, and all these things are just, they're absolutely insane what they're doing with this wireless technology with the AI and the data centers now. So take a look at that, because this is going to be part of the issue here, right? As we have many different types of the radiation, internal and external. Okay, and you have to be aware of all of it. Some of it is being inhaled. All the people that are in this area that have had smoke for like 3 weeks solid and rain for another 3 weeks, right? What are we inhaling? What are you consuming? You can put this little thing here. What did you take in your arm? Did you take something up the nose? Did you take something in the butt? Are you getting transmitted or shed on? Right? All these things have got factors of how we can receive it. So it can come in many different ways. And that's one of the things in here. This is one of my favorite things I like to tell every once in a while. These are amount of bunkers that can be used, reused, commissioned, and decommissioned. You happen to know where the fires are, you'll see that it seems to correlate very heavily to some of these things as well. Okay? And this is one of the things I really wanted to get in here. If you start seeing the gamma, right? Let's see what kind passed through the body. Look at the gamma. It goes through aluminum foil. So a lot of people go tin foil, silver, copper. This stuff is even some of this stuff, neutrinos and neutrons and x-rays and stuff can go, right? That's why they wear leaded stuff here. So you've got to be very careful. As you can see, when we started detecting gamma here a few weeks ago, now it's going to become really, it goes right through the body. It's not like a little x-ray, right? Look at the damage that goes through there. So anyway, and again, technical stuff. Watch where you're buying your supplies, right? Tampons, food, water, all that stuff. I can't believe I'm still saying the same thing for 20 years, or the last 6 years, the last 2 years. I see even in the groups in there, people are, talking, well, I don't see how you could possibly get transmitted. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you haven't heard the word contagion. You shouldn't hear contagious. You haven't heard the word sexually transmitted diseases. Like, what the hell is wrong with people? Like, I just don't get it. Okay. So in here, like I said, potassium iodide, rhodiola works, actually, you guys. So does apple pectin. A lot of these solutions that they use are still, sort of pharma grade. So if it's not something you want to go into, Lugol's iodine, but test your iodine first. I usually test all my clients because maybe you got a thyroid problem and you don't want to be taking extra iodine, but you could break down something very easily like rhodiola, or you could do the apple pectin, something like that. Natural remedies. Well, look at that. Violets, leafy greens, dandelions, nettles. A lot of this stuff is really good for that. Red clover. A lot of this stuff, like I said, some people are using the seaweeds and the algaes and stuff like that. All of these things are known to be somewhat helpful. Are they going to remove it? No, it's going to help slow it down. But at least these are the things you want to concentrate on. And rather than wheat, what we call in Russia is called kasha. In Russia, kasha. Anyway, buckwheat, what you guys, kucha, also in here is the buckwheat. It's plus 33. It acts different than a wheat. It can also be sprouted, and you can make flours out of it. Might be a little bit better. So these are some things that you can do. You can also sprout sunflowers as well. So sunflowers can be made with milk, by the way. So to me, sunflowers are the most underrated thing that you can do. Pâtés, you can make sunflower cheeses, by the way. So again, always have some sort of detector. Some of these are $50, $60, $100. Go on an Amazon, and it will tell you beta, gamma, X-ray, and nuclear. Okay. So have these on here. You can also get an EMF. And again, one of the best things is essential oils. Get a nice bunch of like lavenders and your carrot seed oil and all sorts of things. Eucalyptus trees, spruce fir, pine, all wonderful oils for that too. Okay. And that's why we're keep your brain up. That's why we're using this, because these things can affect you. That's why we're using so much in here. This is just an example. I know it's hard to see, but near Nelson, we had 200 lightning strikes. Direct energy weapons, flashes, flares, call it whatever you want. You're also getting, all of those are like having a mini little, time bomb sit there. Again, this stuff is happening all over. So if you've got the opportunity to take a look at it, do. So this is some of the stuff I put together for people. Like I said, a lot of times you may not be aware of what's going on, but this is something that's very, very important. This one's a much better concentrated when you actually can see that who's doing what to you that you're not aware of. Okay. And unfortunately, Canada's got very little monitoring equipment, at least to the people. Like I said, this is what it's been looking like in several areas. You can be even like 2, 3, 4, 500 miles away, and we're still getting the inhalation particles. Remember when Fukushima happened, stuff was, floating up like a week later on the shores of Vancouver. Okay. There's no borders to this stuff, you guys. So you got to be very careful. It's affecting the water, the wildlife, and everything. Okay. So it's amazing. And like I said, a lot of times you can't see what's happening, whether it's an individual, whether it's an ostrich, whether it's the animals, we're all getting fried. So this is something I just wanted to bring to your attention on there. So we're going to go through a little bit of the comments here and see what happened here. Someone said, Ed, you said you live in Blaine, very close to BC. You do. And you guys are like Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Who some days keeps me amused. And I used to ice in Colorado, and I may move back. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Live nowadays. Okay, hopefully. Anyway, Dr. August Dunning is some great work as well. Australia and Western Australia is a cactus for the tsunamis. Absolutely. In there, I talk with people in Australia, usually every week or two. And the micronova that unlocks those low velocity zones. Absolutely. Until you've got a thing here, and all the planets are now showing signs of this event. It's not just local. That's right. It's a galactic thing. It's a solar thing. It's massive, isn't it? It's not going to be one thing. What affects us is going to affect everything. It's a ripple effect, right? So those are some of the things that I think are really, really important. Okay, on there. The other thing that was on there, I'm going to switch a little bit onto something else. How many of you guys know who Kelsey Sharon is? Does anyone know who Kelsey is? One of the things I'm going to bring to your attention, I love Kelsey. She's a ex-combat vet. She's a female. And this woman has been putting her butt on the line in many different ways. Okay. Her hearing was affected, post-traumatic stress, you name it. She got it from watching all the combat and stuff that was going on. She's been an advocate for brass over, unity. There's been amazing stuff coming out that Kelsey's been able to start putting out here. I've been following her for a long time. And one of the things as well is that, a lot of people just are not aware of some of the stuff that a lot of people have done. And I think this is really pretty amazing. So we're going to take a look at Kelsey for a few minutes. And the reason why, because it's going to slide into some of the different things I think people need to be aware of, and when you go into this, what can you do when you don't know where to go or look at some of the stuff that's in here? So one of the things in here, we're going to take a look at my Facebook here. Let's take a look. Now, one of the things you can see is Kelsey Sharon. Okay. In here, she has got a thing called Brass and Unity and Kelsey Sharon. And she's
Canadians
coming up.
Are weak. Or you sit there and you actually boo somebody who's trying to protect women and girls.
So it doesn't matter if it has to do with the SOGI, the transgender, the grooming, and the children. Kelsey's got a lot in here.
Okay, hi friends. I don't know if you guys remember, I did a video not that long ago about change.org doing this crazy petition. And it was to encourage more people, you can see right here, to end their lives. And they're saying that it was white privilege for Canadians who get to be killed by their doctor. And they actually took advantage of an amazing organization called Compassion Canada. Now, Compassion Canada does incredible work. I'm going to show you who they are right now, because whoever created that change.org stole and impersonated this incredible organization's name. And I want to highlight this organization because they are doing work that I wish more people would know about. So let's take a look. Okay, these guys are incredible people. They actually go around and they actually help children get out of poverty. And now this is who the true Compassion Canada is.
So these are some of the different places, just if you're not aware of. The reason I want to highlight stuff is because I put something up on my Facebook. And I put a little article and I put some of the different things that Kelsey had been putting, because like I said, I didn't just come across this. I watch a lot of stuff. She was with, Jillian Michaels. She was recently on in the last year or two with Jordan Peterson because he took the shot. Now he's really sick and dying. So he's become a real big advocate in, education, right? Informed consent. So one of the things also, she was on trigonometry. There are a lot of people that she's been going to the States. She was just on a States tour, right? So when you get on there, she's got an incredible X as well. So if you're on her X or on her Substack, I suggest you go there. It's not just about what happens to vets, but how it came across her field or vision or whatever, is that a lot of the vets that had, like her, post-traumatic stress, they actually took shrapnel, they took gunshot wounds, all sorts of things. So they may look like they're okay, but they're not okay. And so one of the things that came up here, and again, with the hearing loss, with the buzzing, everything else, their visual disturbances, their whole entire nervous system is basically in peripheral nervous system, and vagal nerves are just about shot. Okay, they're on overdrive. And a lot of these people have been looking at different things. And I know she's looking at stuff too. For example, and you'll see a lot of it on Sean Ryan's show as well. A lot of people, vets for vets, but they're coming in. A lot of them are already on meds, so you can't put them on psychedelics. So a lot of things like ibogaine and what you guys call iboga, cambo, frog medicine, a lot of this stuff, mushrooms, things like that, you can't do when a lot of these people are on meds. Okay, so don't start suggesting a lot of this stuff when you actually don't know when someone's history. And a lot of these people, it's a private, personal thing they don't want you to know about. Even sometimes when I've had to deal with people, they're sometimes hesitant with that. Okay, there's sometimes a hesitancy with the SARA. There's says, if you had some kind of abuse, and there's certain things people, it could be even a TA, which is called a therapeutic abortion. A lot of things have happened to people they're not always comfortable about, even on a form. So when you think, sometimes it's taken me 1 or 2 times just to get a client comfortable that they're able to start at least releasing that. So then we can, go back. Sometimes you got to change a whole entire point of view. There are certain things, meds you don't do. There's certain herbs you don't do. There's certain homeopathics you don't do, right? Things along that line. So one of the few things I know they were trying was ketamine. That was one of the few things if people are on antidepressants. And a lot of these people, which is quite scary when you think about, the majority of our forces are on these medications already. And then they have weapons on their hands. And then when they come back, they're even more stressed out. So those are one of the things in there. And I want to take a look at, but let's go a little bit into Kelsey's thing, because you know what? This is amazing. Kelsey has actually been on Tucker Carlson, whether you like Tucker or not. And you even know which clone to this clone, doesn't matter. Tucker's coming out and he's creating a lot of information. And one of the things that was really amazing that he started talking about, he actually had Kelsey on. She actually was not supposed to be on those shows and ended up on there. She has even made it into InfoWars, okay? I love it because she's very proactive in what she's been talking about. And, like I said, if you haven't seen some of the things in here, look at what she's got. Here's another thing. She's been on InfoWars. She's quite well known. I think she's more well known probably internationally than she is up here. But, I'm pretty proud of what she's been doing. And I actually have texted back and forth and I've sent her some stuff, because one of the things that happened there is that what is going on to people is affecting everyone around us, right? And I really want to get into some of this stuff because I sent her, I said, Kelsey, I put something up on my Facebook and like just mind blowing. You know what happened is I've had close to 60,000 people make comments on it. It was pretty controversial. I had to shut down the commenting for a while because I was trying to educate people. And after some point, you're just not going to educate people. But this is some of the stuff I want you to see that's really profound. What I put in the last week here. And again, a lot of people do not know what is actually even in these stupid injections, okay? And I'm going to go through some of that, because don't talk to me that you know what it is unless you've actually read every freaking ingredient, like the recipes that are being given to people. And then I'm going to tell you about some of the stuff that I know that happened. That's totally unlawful, totally illegal, even within theirs, but it's happening. And it's pretty insane. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what I found, what I put up, and why it created controversy this week. because I like having some controversy in my life. Like, really? Okay, let's get what we got here. Okay, this is the article I put up here. Okay, it's not that old. It's only a day old. Okay, it says most missed of the clot shot. I have to keep going back and adding to this because I'm like, you're not getting what I'm talking about here. Okay, so did you miss most of the clot shots? Also have side effects. Okay. And basically, people were going in for this. And a lot of people brought up, and this is just a hint of something, whether you agree with it or just don't. This document was allowed to go public. It was given with the family's permission and consent to educate people. So I don't care. People going, oh, it's private. It's not private. This is public information now. Okay, so one of the things in here, which I'll go into, right, that there were undercover investigations that she brought up on even Tucker Carlson. So, for example, and this is just one of it, a 26-year-old that was a little depressed and had diabetes, right? And then people go, well, you don't know how bad it is. Like, you don't know this, right? Da, 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 da. And so one of the things that's so freaking mind-blowing about this kind of stuff, and Dr. Ellen Wiebe is known as the death doctor, right, of BC. Go to Vancouver, Boot. People were coming in and they've been flying in from all over because, you know, these people don't have boundaries. So he brought his own poison at a pharmacy, right? And they can overdo stuff. You get the right thing. You can move from track 1 to track 2 real easy in 2 to 1. No problem. Right? And now this is known. And I tracked it down. So don't even question this. I already spent this. Or if you want to question it, go check it out. You actually, and she phoned it. This is why people are questioning. I'm like, just, you know, shut up until you've actually done the studies. Or you looked at the links that Kelsey and I have put in. She actually called this funeral home herself, and I listened to her while it was on speaker. This was mind-blowing. You can actually go into one of the funeral homes because it's deemed a MAID site now. Okay, for those of you who don't know it, in the States, you have medically assisted in dying. In here, it's called medically assisted in dying. So whether you're MAD or MAID, they're all MAD. Okay, doesn't matter. In my world, I've seen diabetes. That's just a word. My gosh, it's parasitical pH and diet. I've seen people reverse it and be off actually insulin in 2-3 weeks. It's possible. There is no such thing as that. Even neuropathy and stuff, if you get it in time. Essential oils. I do that all the time. I have clients I have had with black feet and gangrene they were going to do surgery on that came to me in the last hour, and we reversed it. He's still got his feet to this day, and he hasn't gone near the hospital since. Okay? Now, one of the things, and there's a whole thing even on Section 14, you're not supposed to be able to do that against someone's consent. This has never been informed to start with. Okay? So one of the things, and it varies a little bit province to province, but not that much. This is now getting to be lies and corruptions. And this is my caveat, what I said in here. This is my thing. This is not informed consent whatsoever. Just like the injections, they was not disclosed. It's a premeditated act of war. Therefore, it's not an informed decision. I'm not saying people aren't having pain, but you're talking about in the allopathic system. There's always been 95% of it is somewhat rectifiable. Even in palliative care, we can do it naturally, usually with very minimal, if not any pain. Okay, so what it is when you have to do that and agree to that and agree to the organs and the harvesting or your adrenochrome or leucine, you have to be alive. Do not assume this. And one of the worst things, I think it's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard in my life, is that it was a peaceful death. Bullshit. Okay? Absolutely bullshit. You want to know why? Because one of those ingredients, if they give it, is to make sure you're paralyzed. You can't bat an eyelash. Do you know there are people didn't have the right amount of doses, or they missed that and started doing the other 3 shots, and they woke up screaming to stop it because they were being tortured. And one of these things is it's called waterboarding. Waterboarding is basically like drowning. That means they suffocate you. This is not peaceful. I've been a nurse in neonatal, in ICU, in PICU. I know what paralyzing the patient does. Maybe you don't, but to assume it's a peaceful death, even in palliative care, they should get their asses kicked because they're torturing and they are they're paralyzing them. They give you your midazolam, your Versad. I saw them doing it there and I started calling it out. I called Judge Alfred Weber, a tribunal judge with a Washington inactive bar. I said, they're murdering people in the bloody hospitals. I've seen them do it. You know, I reported it. Everyone else wants to go, whatever. But basically, you can torture someone. You can torture them anywhere. It could last an hour, it could last 24 hours. By that point, you're already in some place they could be cutting out your organs while you're still alive and paralyzed, by the way. Okay? You have failed to do that. There's people that actually in Canada that woke up. They were pronounced, for gosh sakes, dead. The MD came in, pronounced them dead, gave a death certificate, and they woke up hours later. Guess what? They weren't dead. Okay? And then this is another thing, and this is documented. Kelsey's got so much documentation, so have other people. If you haven't studied this at the deep level, okay, to do that. I know that people have very little knowledge in quantum health, let alone at the naturopathic or homeopathic level. This is pH. Did you know you can use Rife, MMS, ozone, biofeedbacks, natural remedies? There are 3-4 herbs you can start using. The diabetes reverses within there. There's a whole video called Reversing Diabetes in 30 Days Going Raw. I know the people that were there. I know the people that ran the centers because I patterned my center a little bit off that. Even the people on mental psych drugs can be reversed all the time, weaned off. And then how many of these people took the shots and they're correlating it to something else? Okay, a lot of this is actually parasitical to being gut, food, or water poisoning, all of which is treatable, all of it, which it is. So what I'm saying is only an ignorant fool would say that it's peaceful. When you're being paralytic agencies, just like you were being put in a surgical OR room with anesthetic and then drown them in their own fluids. I call that torture. But if you're not medically trained, well, for God's sakes, you pass grade 6, you should be able to read a damn insert in the 4 drugs and how they interact. I may be a natural nurse, but, I learned how to read. And at least I got retrained in energy medicine, quantum health, natural health, and every other modality I could possibly find. Now, one of the things I want to go in here is this is what the controversy was over. Some of the people thought was just a little too heavy duty here, right? This was the death certificate. Okay. And this I want you to see here. This is given by permission by the family. Okay. These are public documents. When I got it, I can go get my mom's. You're related to it, or you want to put it out, or you're the executor. Guess what? Public documents now. Okay. I want you to see what it says here. Where was the place? Other. Guess where it says? Funeral home. You didn't die at home. You didn't die at hospital. The site of this death, I will say, it's not death. It's another thing. There's a difference between killing and murder, and this is what this is at the funeral home. And what was some of the things too? What did they say was the cause of death? They tell you right there, MAID. Now, what was given some of the things that may have been an underlying cause? He had some neuropathy and some visual problems and some diabetes. Guess what? A lot of that stuff can be manageable and stuff here. And actually who injected them. Okay. A lot of times I will tell you the reason this is a famous case and it's not maybe on here. A lot of these people were actually living somewhere else and they were denied in those provinces. So a lot of people from Ontario tried to do this and Ontario wouldn't let them have it. So guess where they flew to? You got it, into Vancouver. Okay. And there's the place of death at the funeral home. Okay. By the way, when Kelsey found him, if you don't know that part, because I just challenge you. When she phoned him, and I heard this because she recorded it all, it was on speakerphone, you could get a better discount. If you wanted to use them as the funeral home and the casket and whatever else in the cremation or whatever you want to do, you get a better discount, just to let you know. It was about $300. Okay. So until people start making uninformed comments or stupidity, I'm just cutting that off or just removing it because I can't take stupidity on my sheets anymore here. Okay. So these are some of the things I suggest you take a look at. MAID is into drowning. Breaking down what's happening in Canada, why it's the highest place just about in the world if you want to do it. Okay, who's benefiting? Take a look at that. They don't have to pay you out anymore. And especially when it came down to vets and stuff like that. There is so much stuff into what's going on. It's a dark cartel, just like the injections were. This ties hand in hand, by the way. The other thing, too, if you remember, if you put the biosensors in with more EMF and that triggers it through Tesla-phoresia, you're going to have more and more issues. So this becomes a real issue. But just take a look at it because you know what? There are very few people speaking out on that. It really burns my butt when I start seeing some of this stuff here. But, you know, one of the things too is when you look at MAID in BC and you start looking at what the injections are, right? What is the actual injections that are used and the drugs and the PDFs in here, you'd be pretty well, like, you know, blown right away. Okay, so are there 3 medications? Some are using 4. What is the process in here? What are dosages? These are the same people that gave you the injections in here, right? You know, so there's the different things here. You know, if you don't know, look it up. If you don't know what that is, go look it up again, because all of this stuff is documentable. It's easy to find. It seriously isn't that difficult to take a look at here, right? Here's the thing, if you don't know, here's what it is, right? As I start going through here, you got plan A, you got plan B. Oh, by the way, you can get it orally too. That might take 24 hours for you to really kick the bucket. Okay, so read about their plans if you haven't read that. So there's your lidocaine. There's your, oh, you're feeling a little bit with midazolam. Don't worry, we're going to sedate you so you just are so like dopey you wouldn't know what's happening. Okay, propofol, phenobarbs, sodium chloride, mercuriums, bromides. Yeah, does that look like something, you know, food? Look at all the other stuff. Lorazepams, haloperidol. Yeah, let's just make you in here. Start looking at all this stuff, right? Find out what they're actually doing here. You know, this is insane. And then you start wondering about, have you ever noticed that if you just ate flour and you just put some sugar and then you put some chocolate in there and then you put some maple syrup, those are 4 different ingredients. What happens when you put them together though? Did you think about that? Okay, that's what's in there. They don't all work synergistically. They don't. So this is really, I mean, when people say that you are actually peaceful, you are so full of crap, you have no idea. You know, so when you start going in here, and this is, you know, the death with dignity, that's just an oxymoron, right? Anyway, so some of the 3 medications in here is that midazolam, which acts like Valium, right? It's a sedative, anti-anxietal. Oh, you're going to start falling asleep, you know, and then remember it's what dosage is that. Okay. And then a lot of times you might get the lidocaine to numb the vein, right? Because normally what happens is it irritates the vein. Some of this stuff burns. It's like putting something caustic in your thing. That's why people have woken up while they were actually being put under for euthanasia here, right? For MAID. And then when you get the propofol, right? Also used for emergency to sedate you because it's going to put you into a coma. You're not peaceful. They've put you into a chemical lobotomy. You're being put into a comatose state, right? Now, I want you to see this. This is why peaceful, I always laugh. I'm like, your heads are so up your asses. Like, really, where do people come up thinking this is in here? Okay, I want you to take a look at this again. Now, the death with dignity, my ass. Anyway, here you can go. Okay, there's the meds, 3 or 4, depending on what you want to do. So let's just go through them. I want to make sure you know that. Here's the first one, midazolam. Okay, you're going to go in here. So what's going to happen? You're going to get sleepy. That's what it says. Person will usually start falling asleep, right? They like to use that, you know, inject people in the psych center. Boom, let's give them something. Anyway, then you can do lidocaine because you want to do it. Because why? Because it can irritate the vein. And they want it to be comfortable. No, they just don't want you to be able to fight. Okay? And then the next drug, commonly used for sedating patients, right? Into a coma, right? Notice it says the doses used in MAID are far larger used than in surgeries or emergency. So you can rest assured they're not going to experience distress. Bullshit. I mean, you know, people that we've had organ harvesting. We've had people and stuff that can tell you exactly what happened, right? Do know worry. The reason is it's not distressing for the patient because they may stop, breathing because they're in such a deep coma. They may no longer care about breathing. In other words, they're putting into a respiratory arrest here. But there we go. There's the favorite one. It's a paralytic of the muscles. You can black in here. If they haven't stopped it, they're going to stop you. And you know what? It says, and this is a lie, saying that organs will just shut down till the heart stops beating and then natural. What do you think this says? Okay. If you actually look up Recurium and what these drugs actually do, unbelievable. It's called waterboarding. That's why they made this kind of stuff actually illegal in the States, because they consider it to be, here it goes here, on criminals. He claimed there were studies of criminals. They did it by lethal injection. It could be similar to drowning. It's kind of called like, waterboarding, suffocation. Hell of a way to go out. So like I said, even if you question some of you look at some of the medications, right? I've always looked at people and went, do you actually know what this stuff does? Do you want to look at the clinical data of what this stuff can do? These are, non-depolarizing neuromuscular blockers. Okay. Absolutely used. And even if we took Wikipedia, which is ridiculous, but I could go to the drug bank. I could go to the Mayo Clinic. I could go to the actual Pfizer. Who makes this? Did you know Pfizer makes it? Same people that gave you basically the other injections here. Right? Accidental administration may cause death. Well, no, they're going to do that. They're going to do that. So I want you to know who it's made by, just in case you missed that. Anyway, yeah, those are things here, just to let you know, and then we can get into more specifics here. So one of the things too, like I said, can give you, most people, when you take it or prolong some of this stuff, it interacts with a lot of other things. Can you imagine if someone was actually on a whole bunch of other meds for painkillers, anticonvulsants, antibiotics, lithium, all the other things that you like to put people on, anti-cancer drugs, who knows what else? Can you imagine the Brompton's cocktail of that, the witch's brew? So, I just wanted to put that into some perspective, just in case someone thought they missed it. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention. So these are one of the things in here new too. So in things, Ed goes, it's a chemical lottery. Yeah, wow. So Ed says, you stop smoking weed, be super aware. It's genetically modified. And if I showed you actually cigarettes, weed, especially vaping under a live microscope, you would see all the critters moving around. It's not pretty. You're right. It's hybridized, right? And it's hybridized and laced with a lot of stuff here. And so those are one of the things here. Oh, Jen's in here. How are you? So Jen says, hi, Karen. I want to ask you if you have a frequency for black goo. Thank you so much for your work and sharing your knowledge and experience. Wow, that's a good one. So black goo, actually, I just put some stuff up. Did you read my Facebook? I just put a whole bunch of stuff up with the graphene oxide because people were having questions about that. So I put a whole thing up because black goo is sometimes referred to as graphene oxide. It's kind of similar to what it is. And I gave some stuff to some people on what was going on with Harold Ketzvala. Because Harold Ketzvala is actually, I think, got probably one of the best things on here. And I know I did it this week, and it will probably take me forever to find my Facebook. So I'm just going to do a quick search here on that. Because, a lot of times you can go into my Facebook here, and you will be able to find all the fun stuff that I have here. So let's say if I'm my Intel group here, and you go into search and put the keywords in. Let's say if I put, or don't put something in. Let's try black goo. You want to see articles I've done? A lot of them. It will probably come up. And one of the things one day ago, okay, not new. Harold Ketzvala was part of actually the BASIS conference. He was 46. I'm 47. I know Harold's number. Max Spears was 37 too. Anyway, so one of the different things in here, if you want to take a look at it, very, very important. And so some of the stuff I've tried to do in here, I want you to see here, very, very important. So Harold gave this, and you got to remember a lot of what we did was 8-10 years ago, right? And he's done a lot of stuff even in here, but he'll get up there and he'll start talking about it.
I want to enter the entire picture from a different angle for today. And this is if we have somebody who is doing things in secret. It's not published in the newspapers. He will not talk about it in public. Then you have the other side of the game that somebody is trying to figure out what is happening. And then there comes this ugly word, conspiracy theory. and one feels isolated.
So one of the things in there is what was really great is because he talks about the black goo here.
Or big villa escape territories. When they are chucked out of the United States, they're going to be down there, living in this little village in Paraguay. And a friend of mine went down there to get samples of this black goo from Paraguay. And he realized that Angela Merkel had her villa next door. Yeah? And this black goo has to do something with the communication with demons. This is in the black magic tradition. These black goo schists were used to communicate with demons. So this all interconnects on political, scientific, and the level of mythology. We can access black goo also from the little pictures from the microscope. This is German rain. And if you want to know what this liquid does, you can have a look at it in the lab. When you have bigger amounts of it, it looks like this. It's a liquid crystal.
It's programmable.
This liquid is self-organizing physically.
Injected into all the injections and all
And
your
this, at the
freezing,
moment,
also into
is
almost all the
sleeping.
meds and prescriptions. And
It's
the
not
animals
aware of being
get mad.
observed. It's quiet. Sometimes when it doesn't like to be observed, it might jump out of the pot straight into your face. If you have two of those in one room, get them 5 meters close to each other, they stare at each other,
15,
and they
20 feet.
decide that they want to be united. And then they start to pull. It's like magnetism, but it's intelligent. And when they realize that you hold them within the vessel and they cannot escape, they get angry and start to shake the vessel and try to break through the wall. Because they know once they are through, they can flow over the ground and unite to a bigger unit. This is something you can just observe in the lab. And especially this liquid was extracted from those black stones. This is World War II leftovers. We found them in an underground facility in Bavaria, 1/2 ton of it. So we can imagine that the SS.
So you can imagine going into. So that's something I'm going to stick in here because I think it's something really important. He's done a lot of things in here. When you start looking at Dr. Lee Merritt, okay, we've been able to get to some people, okay? And remember, this is something that, we've been dealing with and talking about for easily a decade. In my fields, 2 decades on here. So, when you talk about graphene or graphene oxide, one of the things I just sent to someone as well was actually, and I'm going to put that in the chat room because I think that's important. I mean, this is one of the oldest ones. It's probably the still most relevant to me because we're getting the information out. And again, we might look at it also from a spiritual point of view or a quantum point of view. He talked about it. It allows to do that. The process that they are exciting it with. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the fires, which is kind of acting like what Sabrina Wallace was talking about too with the 2.4, 2.45 gigahertz. They're using to excite those chemicals and create ground fires in all the different forests. And I'm going to show you something that I came across. I've been giving out to a bunch of people. I've been spending this week doing that to people I think can make a difference or people I think that need to know about it. I was on Tucker Carlson's on a show live today. I sent it in the chat room to him and I highlighted it. So hopefully it was coming across and go, whoop, right? I said, you need to look at this. This is a causative factor in here. And so one of the things in here, when you had the Falkland Islands and Paraguay and all sorts of stuff in here. So if you don't know about that, the black goo, you guys call it graphene, call it whatever you want, right? I mean, like I said, Harold's probably one of the top people, Valor, Katz Valor, whatever you want to go by these days, everything changes. So one of the things in here I think is really, really important is I put this up for people today, and I'm going to do it again. Tesla paresis. Okay. And what is that big freaking word? Teslaphoresis is actually graphene. And the teslaphoresis is what was done at Rice University. And in here, there's a YouTube on it. I'm going to play it for you so you see these nanotubules and how they're doing it, because a lot of people don't always get what's going on into the injections. People, PCR injections, nanotech, dental stuff. There's a bunch of stuff here. So we're going to take a look at that because I think that's important. You got to be able to tie this in. Now, I want you to think of what they're doing with the fires as well. This is another thing I'll bring up. And so you're going to see how this all ties in together, right? So one of the things in here is the nanotubules we'll look at with Rice University. Let's take a peek at that, shall we? And we're going to go over here to Rice University.
What we've designed, and we've done this very, very quietly, but we're glad to now release it to the world, is this idea of teslaphoresis, which is a discovery we made several years ago, and we've been developing it.
Like for 70 years. World War II, 70 years. So I want you to see how that graphene goes in, how it's working with the computer checks. This is exactly what's happening inside the body's head to toe, every organ in those people inject it. That's what's on your tampons. That's what's in your pharmaceuticals. That's what's in even things like, remember things like your methylene blue, your EDTA, all those things people are trying to shove down people right now. That's also what's in ivermectin. Okay. We've seen this stuff light up a year later on someone. It might be sitting dormant. You don't know what the trigger is for that individual. You don't. You don't know if they're doing that city, that area, that province, or that what's going to go on. You don't know if it's just at night they're doing it.
And teslaphoresis is, the simplest way to understand it is self-assembly at a distance, just long distance assembly of materials. And what we did was, because we're at Rice, we had plenty of nanotubes around, so we decided to use nanotubes. And what we discovered was that these nanotubes can actually string together and form wires by themselves under this electric field.
Now, what did Harold just tell you? They had two containers 15, 20 feet apart. They jumped out and tried to run towards each other. Okay. That's why you see this a lot in a lot of the horror shows in the comics.
This fundamental idea of force acting at a distance, that you can have, instead of, when you normally build circuits and things like that, you have to have physical contact. Now we're talking about building circuits without actually touching them.
All right, we're just dispersing this. Power on. And up. I realized that a Tesla coil could actually do this if you designed it in a way to create a very strong force field in front of it.
Now you wonder why all these people are acting like mental that have taken this. There's some of your explanation, by the way. It goes in, it's competing with the electrical nervous systems and the neurons in the brain. It's affecting their memory. And that's how the takeover goes. And he told you that they're playing with Tesla coils. Okay. This is not new. So when you started getting about that, yeah, a lot of times people weren't in there. So I have an awful lot of libraries that I've developed with the Genius Biofeedback with Ryan Williams equipment. And I have gotten stuff, but you got to remember graphene is the least of sort of our issues, or sometimes the black goo. It's the other things that's interfaced. If it goes, a lot of stuff is going to intercellular and we just can't do that. So graphene, you can use a lot of stuff. People were talking about the nanobots and the nanotech and the smart tech and all that. A lot of times people are using other things that will excite it. They've been using PEMF, they've been using Rife coils, they've been using spookies, and you don't hook up people like that, right? So I want you to think of all those little circuits. That black goo kind of acts like a pacemaker. I would never hook up anyone with the pacemaker. Can we actually remove some of that stuff too? It's been put in food, water, it's in your cereals, it's in the geoengineering coming over to you as air pollution, trailing out all over the place. And again, there's some stuff we can do with it. People are talking about using nicotine. Again, there's metamaterials within the patches. So you need to get it into a clean form, like a herbal form, into a tincture or stuff like that that could be used instead. You can actually patch or do other kind of things as well with tobacco leaves and stuff. So those are some of the things anyway. And if anyone's got any questions, that was a great question. Thank you for asking, Jen. How's everything down there? One of the things also, on a happy note, I started doing some really cool stuff with Reese Thomas. He's got the Reese Thomas Institute. So on something like that, this guy's just mind blowing. If you haven't taken a look at the Reese Thomas Institute, I suggest you do. This guy is absolutely phenomenal. He's one of the original masters in here too. And one of the things that's really amazing is you can see what he's been doing. He's been training with the crystal bowls, and talk about synchronicity. Actually, I'd gone to several of his workshops, and then one day he calls me up. He says, "You're supposed to be in my school." I don't know how it's going to work. I said, "No, my tranny blue." Not good timing, right? And he's like, "No, you're coming." And I am. So one of the things in here you might see at the Reese Thomas Institute here is you can find him all over the place. Actually, I'm going to go on Facebook here, and you can take a look at that. There's a couple links through there. Also, he's got his school. He's got an energy, like a mystery / enlightenment school, call it whatever you want. Energy healing schools he's been doing for a long time. He's basically near Boston, Massachusetts area. Okay. And one of the things that's really great about Reese is that he also does free workshops every couple of months. So if you haven't been able to get into there, so I was like, I just want to go. After I've been to 4 of these workshops, I've been taking somatic, also training, all sorts of stuff. Just, I like to keep busy. So that's one of the things I really like to do here. So on that, taking a look, we'll just actually go right over so you can see what I'm talking about here on his Facebook. So it's Reese Thomas Institute. And if you don't know anything about bulls, you definitely will. I mean, I thought I knew a lot. And I went, I feel like an ant next to him some days learning some of these techniques. So this is actually what we're taking. I'm taking a certified crystal bull healer, but there's so many different forms within there. But you got to remember, at the core level, we are actually crystal. We're crystalline in nature. And that's why over tuning forks or stuff like that, the crystal bulls actually respond better. There are bulls physically, there are bulls mentally, there are bulls emotionally, all the above. Okay. And they all come different ways. How you do it, it's not just one thing or another. So one of the things that you're seeing in here is how to accelerate stuff, how to start reading with people, right? How to get Emporium bowls, how to get, and this was the best part. You know what a bunch of us learned? The 440 is still one of the original frequencies that was used. 432, it's not that it's evil. And this whole thing about, oh, it's bad, they changed it all, it's all bad, you got to sell 432 and 528 bowls. That's a selling feature. Okay, these were some of the original things and what they do and how they do it, on here. So I thought this might be something that you guys really, really like. So if you keep onto his website and his newsletter, you'll find out, or his Facebooks, you're going to see that that's basically what he does, right? That the 440 was actually the frequency, and it sharpens the perception, it strengthens boundaries, it anchors awareness in the body, and it brings the nervous system more fully in line. Okay. So one of the things in here is that when they switched to the 432, basically that was just for more people that felt unsafe or, I think, overstimulated, right? And you need more grounding rather than activation. Okay. So again, why would you want to choose a 440 bowl when people are having disassociation? They don't feel grounded. You're highly empathic. You do better with a 440 bowl. So a lot of this stuff, as we went into it, what happens is that the 440 actually stacks cleaner harmonics. So it actually creates a longer standing wave. And this is one of the things that actually is more in there. And so what it does, it actually allows us to move from 3rd and 4th octaves. It actually slides in between. So these are some of the things in here. And we're working on a 12 chakra gateway type of thing, not only for meditation, but using the biofield to come in here. So a lot of times what we're doing is we're actually sitting there and we are actually feeling the crystal bowl. So if he actually gongs something, let's say at a certain, whether it's, B, C, whatever it might be for the chakra, okay, he might do something here. He might hit it and I'm going to experience it in my toe and someone's going to experience it in their heart. Another one will have it in their, knees or something like that. So one of the things is there are similar to, as you think the traditional Chinese medicine point, there's an affirmation, there's a sound seed, there's a chant to go with the bowls as well, right? So some of these are, what's your physical life purpose point? C sharp. What is your spiritual life purpose? F sharp. So then there are different things when you get into the sharps, what it's actually doing. So these are a whole bunch of like really cool things. If you hadn't had the chance to take a look at it, take a look at some of this stuff. So another one in here, like I said, the Reese Thomas Institute is in here. So, and it's also Crystal Bowler. If you guys want to get bowls, he also has bowls as well. We also found some really cool stuff here as well on Amazon. Quick thing. The whole thing about this is the trauma and stuff like that. Trauma's not just a memory, it's a frequency. And that frequency can actually hold into the actual biofield. And that's why he's working with the 12 chakra points here. I'm going to start going into some of this stuff too. Really important as things cross the blood-brain barrier. So these work way better, way quicker, I find, than always necessarily in there. So this is something you can do. And I actually started doing sessions. By the way, Jen, when you were asking about stuff like that, is that I've had clients here on Zoom now. And what I've been doing is, well, they're, the first 1 or 2 sessions, I need to know what you know, educate you, get you up to speed, and do the session and the scanning, and then you can listen to it. What I also can do now is you will be lying in the comfort of your bed or on a couch with your pillow, with some iPads or a little, towel over your eyes, and you preferably have headphones on. And what you're doing is you're lying down. Totally different, right? You're not sitting in front of a computer. You're lying down with the headphones or the earbuds, wired in preferably, okay? And you're in a state of relaxation. And that's where then I can start working with not only the biofeedback, but I can work with the crystal bowls. I can work with the symbols. I can use the Tibetan bowls. I can use whatever. Tibetan bowls are not the same thing. When you're working with Tibetan bowls and they're all, right? Not the same thing as crystal, not by a long shot. So we're crystalline in nature, not brass or copper. So one of the things too, or, using the different things in here, right? Like the tuning forks as well. Those are all different things in here. But like I said, I have used it where I'm using probably about 4 or 5 sound modalities. So I can have the biofeedback running while I've got some tuning forks and doing different things. And a lot of times what will happen, and we'll do maybe some of this next week, we're going to talk a little bit about crystal bowls, and we're going to talk a little different about biofield healing. So we'll talk a little bit about how about we do biofeedback, biofield tuning, and then we're going to bowls. We'll do a lot of BBB. Karen's BBB day. Anyway, so we can do that. And so we're going to hear something. And why are we using, the quartzes? Remember, you can use other types of materials as well, other than just the quartz. So some of the things in here are really, really important. So those crystal bowls, like I said, I have very few times have I seen that type of attention and education that you're going to get, and then putting all these different things together. So if it's something that you want to look at, or at least get on, I've even went back to some of his YouTubes from like 8-10 years ago, because he really is doing more of this here. And one of the things I found is that, you learn something off someone at different points, right? On that. And that is something that I thought you actually might really enjoy, because in here, as I said, here's his light worker thing that I'm now taking. Actually, I got several friends doing that. As I said, there's going to be one probably in September or October where you're going to have a 3-hour Sunday that you can come in for free, right? I'm doing a 7-week training. And as I said, if it's something you want to go into, very amazing stuff here. You know, take a look at this. So this is under the Crystal Bowler program for us. So, and learn about what you want to do in here. Also, what he does is he's got those crystal bowls. So
hey there, I'm Rhys Thomas from the Rhys Thomas Institute of Energy Medicine, and I couldn't be any more excited that you found your way here to find out more about crystal bowl sound healing and what I'm calling the Lightworkers Ascension Accelerator Program, which is what I'm surrounded by here. There's nothing that I have found that accelerates your energy, your consciousness, your abilities to be intuitive faster than crystal bowls. And so to me, my experience, number one tool for healers in the world. I've never seen anything accelerate people's learning any faster.
And that's one of the most interesting things there. So I'm going to actually put that on here because some of the things that he has as well for you guys is that in here you can listen to the bowls. He's got a lot of them where he's done different things and how he would use.
And I've been training healers now
a little bit
for
here.
over 2 decades, and I've never.
So one of the things in there that I think is really important, right, is that it was buffering. I think we can get it back. I think it's worth listening to for just a few minutes, and then we'll see what happens there. I'm sure you'll have questions, so let's take a look at that.
Never seen anything accelerate spiritual gifts
See the clear bowls
and consciousness any faster. And today, I'm excited to share with you how to tap that energy in yourself. So there's a great quote. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secret to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So the truth is that healing has always been the act of harmonizing the flow of energy from your body and brain and cells to the highest vibrations of frequency, i.e. not your body, but your many bands of frequency. We call the first 7 chakras, but the ancients said that there were 144, and they knew all of them. That's why they were the ones that were making the pyramids, and we have no idea what they were doing. So it's not your body, but these bands of frequency in your energy field, and thinking and chemicals don't really change that world very easily, but crystal sound does. This is why crystal bowl sound healing is one of the fastest growing healing modalities in the world. When you work with a professional set of crystal bowls like this that are all perfectly matched, which I'll teach you how to do, they will directly harmonize with energy centers in your body, all of the energy centers in your body. And then when they're harmonizing, that's when the cells harmonize and the DNA harmonizes, and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I am on my purpose. Because when you're in your soul state, that's how you feel. And so when you play the bowl, it's like giving your entire body, mind, and soul a gentle reset that instantly increases available energy for healing and life. So as a healer, you use them so that you're holding that highest frequency vibration. As a initiate, you're using them to start holding that higher level, or to experience opening and healing that you can't get in any other way. And if you're a light worker or want to be, the bowls not only give you a fantastic healing technique, but more importantly, when you work with them, they will heal the major blocks you have to putting yourself out there in the world. So strangely, the thing that we're here to do the most, if you're a light worker or an energy healer or an empath or just someone who just loves and wants to heal, the thing that's going to stop you from doing that are the energy blocks in your system, which is what you're here to heal. Okay, and when you heal those, you can then help others as well. In my experience, is that every time you play a tuned bowl, one that's really lined up with you, you step into a deeper, more powerful version of yourself.
You know, that's one of the most interesting things when you start listening to some of this, is how these bowls play together, what combinations work, what are you working on physically, mentally, or emotionally. So those different bowls are different areas.
Frequencies within you.
So that's one of the other things that's really kind of cool when you get into some of this, right? Is you start learning how this actually works together. So it's not just about chakras and stuff like that. And so how some of this actually works. So we're going to play some of these crystal bowls a little bit later. And that's going to be for next week. So that's what you have to get in there. Now, one of the other things too is that there are many things as well. We're going to talk a little bit about crystals. I want to talk a little bit about what we can do. And I'm going to talk just a little bit on the neurosync. So this is also something that came out. If you guys are excited about this, because I'm excited about this. So one of the things too is that we've got the neurovisor that just came out, and the neurovisor is absolutely incredible, you guys. So if you want to take a look at that, I have them available through a couple different things here. And one of the options too, because I'm working with all of these at the same time. I'm doing probably 10 to 12 therapies on a client. They come into here and they're off to the next dimension and then they come back. So one of the things as well that's been really working well is that neurovisor or neurosync. Now, one of the things is that you can't use it, well, someone's got obviously epilepsy, or you're using something, let's say with photosensitivity, or you just had, cataract surgery. So there are some caveats to using this, but you don't have to use the light, or you can use the light at a distance or keep it here so it's not flashing in front of your face. So you're still listening to the music. The music is creating the light patterns, but you can do it with or without the light. So that's one of the other things. So if you wanted to take a look at that, I think this is pretty amazing stuff as well. And let's take a look at seeing neurovisors on right now. So many different programs, and you can do it while you're sleeping. You can do it like this. Go off in here. Basically what happens is we've got hundreds and hundreds of programs that now interface with the Genius, and you can see, you can pick your level of intensity, you can get mild or whatever, and this is actually where this stuff is coming in. So you can get them for sleeping, meditation, stress. You can actually use it instead of microdosing for brain stuff. So those are some of the things that you want to take a look at. Pretty mind-blowing. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So if you haven't seen the neurovisor, or you want to take a look at it, you've got, again, all of these, whether it's biofeedback, or you want to look into going in and doing some of the other things in here, then what you might want to do is try them out. Because you can, again, try anything for crap's sakes for like a month. And then you can always send it back if you don't like it, right? So these are some of the things in here you might want to take a look at, because, again, it's amazing technology for not just letting go, but everyone's brains are getting scrambled. And this is resetting us. And this is what I loved, is when it was starting to work with the heart rate variability, I went, oh, seriously. Like, seriously, we've had people with Alzheimer's come back and dementia. I'm like, this is cool stuff. I like being on the cutting edge of technology because I like to make those cuts, especially when we can bring people back, right? They don't have to be going into some of these, awful things that we're seeing with. Right? So in here, you can learn all about heart rate variability, right?
Inner biological exchange with neurovisor. Heart rate variability is a key indicator of biological. Height means a younger profile. Our use neurovisor for an independent study saw significant RP improvements. More resilient biologically.
Hard to describe. Very simple. This is not the biofeedback, right? We've got a harness. You don't have you can put it on the bedside, and that's it. We know the red light on. So we can take a look. It's great.
For the brain, you could use body exercise as an analogy. Mainly that you feel better, that your brain will function better, it's more adaptable, that change and learn more easily. You feel better. That feeling is hard to
So those are very cool. People start seeing right away, right? We want to see people make a big difference. And when you start going into, things where I can see changes in clients within an hour, I'm impressed, right? Those are some of the things, again, that we can start doing. A lot of people don't realize how simple this is, when they're going into very, very, very basics to this. A lot of people don't realize even how simple it is to do something as easy as a biofeedback machine. It really is not that difficult if you've ever had to do that. And so those are one of the things too. We'll just kind of end up with a little bit of that. And so that you're aware of what I'm doing. If it's something that you want to meet, you have any questions for, or want to do a session, you can call me up. Initial appointments for the first 15 minutes are free. If you want to take a look at something like that, we can also go in and see what you want as well.
Embark on a new here. And all
So what we do is what you're seeing here, what the sounds of the and there we can do a change from sign waves to which is off to wave. Those are some of the things. But when they also make remedies, and that's something that a lot of people are necessarily the totality of what we can do from here and from a distance. Oh, you couldn't hear that. Well, that's where that went. Well, anyway, we're going to leave you today. I want you to have a great evening and reach out. I'm going to Clan Mother 13. I'm going to leave that with you here as we're doing our calm technique and calm experiences here, Karenann MacDonald. But that's where our knowledge, our alignment, our listening, and manifesting with the motivation to go with it. So hopefully that will get you guys motivated to try something. So I'm going to leave my information here. Again, take a look, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Please like, share, and subscribe, and send out. Take care and have a great, great week.